Hello and welcome to Manifesting Napoleon Hill. My name is Beverly Fells Jones, the Silver Fox of Consciousness, and today we are doing part 2. Last week we discussed the 6th leadership trait that Napoleon Hill listed in his book, Think and Grow Rich, in chapter 7. He also discussed it in his correspondence course, The Law of Success in 16 Lessons. And he goes into that concept of doing more than paid for in depth. And today is part 2, where we discuss the law of increasing returns. So let's get started. Welcome back. So, one of the things I wanted to tell you is I apologize for the lighting, but I wanted to get this video done. I am at the Wyndham Resort in Grand Lake, Afton, Oklahoma. Yeah, this is another one of my little trips, and so I packed up everything so that I could do my recording, and I forgot all the lighting. So I'm dealing with the lights here in the condo, and so I've got the tall light lit and that lit, and I've got other lights on in the room. But unfortunately, they think we're supposed to get out of the condo and not have to need really bright lights. So I apologize. Hopefully next time. I don't know how many videos I'm going to do while I'm here, but that's what happens. Anyway, let me get started. So we talked about doing more than paid for, and we talked about some examples, not only from an employee side or a service side as a provider of some service, but we also talked about from the employer side of the employer paying more than is expected in the marketplace. So when an employer, let's say, right now in the marketplace, $12, $13 an hour for a service worker is what is going. But if you become an employer who's paying $15 an hour, you will have more than a few people vying for your position. And you'll be able to become picky, right? Or if it's $12 but you're paying $16, that's $4 more per hour. Yes, you're going to have a lot of people applying, and you can afford to pick the best talent. And that's what Henry Ford did when he was paying, and listen, $5 a week? Can you imagine? But $5 went a long way back then. Sugar was less than 5 cents a pound, or 5 cents. And that people were paying really low rates back then for rent and for other things. But one of the things that Ford said is he wanted his workers to be able to afford what he was selling. And I think that's something that a lot of companies are forgetting these days. They want to pay really low wages, but they forget somebody has to pay for their goods. Yes, I know we in the United States, we just love being able to get a bargain. And so that's why some overseas imported items came in, and they've kind of taken over our market. But looking at, yes, textiles. We used to have wonderful textiles. And they were made here in the United States. The cotton is grown here in the United States. But then the manufacturers said, but you workers want more money. Well, when you think about the worker is sitting there making these fabulous, let's talk about towels and sheets and clothing materials. And they were making it, but they couldn't afford to buy it. They could see it, but they couldn't afford to have it. Automobile workers in Detroit, they began through their union to be able to afford the vehicles that they were building. And we flourished. We flourished and we flourished and we flourished. So let's talk more about this law of increasing returns, right? So when you're doing things and you're doing more than you're paid for, what happens? Well, you may get a promotion, you may get a bonus, you may bring in increased customers. There is an advantage to that. So Napoleon Hill in this section, he says, let us begin our analysis by showing how nature employs this law in behalf of the tillers of the soil. So farmers, or like me, a gardener, right? The farmer carefully prepares the ground. And in the spring, actually in the fall, I've started preparing my beds and my pots that I grow things in by nourishing it. So he prepares the ground, then sows his wheat, and waits while the law of increasing returns brings back the seed he has sown, plus a many-fold increase. So you sow a seed, and you've got a many-fold increase. So I've been playing with sprouting and maybe even some microgreens, and I had one in process, so I brought it with me. So see this. So this is a picture of broccoli. So these were broccoli seeds, and they're growing and they're sprouting, and I'm going to let them get a little bigger and taller and greener, and then I'm going to harvest them and get all the nourishment that it has to offer. So it's the same thing for you when you're showing that. He says, but for this law of increasing returns, man would perish, because he could not make the soil produce sufficient food for his existence. There would be no advantage to be gained by sowing a field of wheat if the harvest yield did not return more than it was sown. So you think about the little seed, and I don't know if you've ever seen a wheat field, but you've got all this wheat blowing, and you know, flour. We get flour from wheat. The stalks are used for feed. There's a lot of things from wheat. So we should apply it to the services that we render, because it can yield more for us than what we put out. And he talks about emphasizing the fact that there's no trickery or chicanery connected with this law. And there isn't. I gave some examples last time about doing more than was asked for, and the rewards continue to be reaped. And that's what I want for you. He says it is to no such end that we recommend the use of the law of increasing returns, for no such end is possible without the broad meaning of the word success. So I want you to put down below, what does success look like to you? What does it mean to you? Give me one thing that, if you're successful, what will it look like? And it could be coming to a condo on vacation. It could be buying a certain outfit, or driving a certain kind of car, or having a certain relationship. Being able to take that cruise you've always wanted to do. Or there's something on your bucket list that you want to do but you haven't been able to do. But if you're successful in a certain thing, what would that be? What will it look for? What would it look like to you? Think about it and put your answer down below. Right? So the $5 a day minimum, right? He had people, Ford had people working for him, and that I'm telling you, he was able to pick and choose. He took advantage of this principle. By paying more wages than the average, he received more service and better service than the average. Now, of course, there are going to be those who take advantage, and you weed those out. They always wind up showing themselves in one way or another. They show themselves being, I'll use the term, fraud. That they're there to get the money, but they're not there to give you the work. And again, those are the ones you let go. And I'm sure you've seen people let go from really good jobs because they didn't do it. And Ford attracted the best labor on the market, and so can you as an employer. Okay. Marshall Field. Now, some of you have no idea who Marshall Field. Marshall Field was a merchant. And as a merchant, he was selling goods and services like Lord & Taylor or J.C. Penney's or Sears or Macy's. So Marshall Field had a rule. And not many people knew about that rule, but there was this case where a woman was given a gift, a wedding gift. However, the person who gave her the wedding gift had bought it years before and never used it. You know how you pull things out of your stash, the re-gifting stash? That's what I'm looking at. But it wasn't really a re-gifting. She bought it and never used it and thought this young lady could use it. Well, the young lady realized that it came from Marshall Field, so she took it back to Marshall Fields to exchange it for something else. Now, Marshall Fields could have said, or the person working for Marshall Fields could have said, I'm sorry, but this is like several years old. We stopped selling this a long time ago. We can't give you your money back. We'd lose money. But they didn't do that. They took it back. The item, now this correspondence course was written in 1927. So this item was $50. Now, we look at $50 back then is worth $1,000 now, approximately, somewhere in that area, but it was an expensive piece. So you look at it, and they could have said, no, we can't do this. No, they took it back. And they credited her $50, and they bought some. She was able to buy something else at Marshall Fields. Now, in reality, he made his money off the $50. They took it back, they put it in the clearance area. They still got some money back, and probably knowing them, what they sold it for was the wholesale price of what they paid for it, right? Well, this woman bought something else in this store, but she became a walking billboard for Marshall Fields in the fact that she said, look what they did for me. They didn't have to do that. I just thought I'd try it, see what happened. I didn't know whether they'd take it back or not, but they really did. They honored that. And so I'm going to be shopping at Marshall Fields often. And she told her friends. So we know about if you see a movie that you really like, you're telling everybody they gotta go, they gotta go. So word of mouth is very important. And Marshall Fields understood that. It's the reason I used to buy Sears appliances, Sears tools, because they had a return policy. They guaranteed their stuff. Well, they don't have that anymore. And I don't shop at Sears anymore. I shop wherever I can get a good guarantee or the quality of the product is really good. But with Sears, I always knew. I had a knife. I'm a knife person. And the knife, I would sharpen it. It was the kind that you could sharpen. And it would always chip, which told me that the blade was not tempered right. I took it back in. I said, hey, there's something wrong with the knives, and they'd replace it. And I mean, several times I had to do that because it was they honored the guarantee and the quality of their products. What do you guarantee? What are you giving? Are you giving good service? Are you working with your employer or with your clients in such a way that you're giving more than paid for, doing things that you might not have to do? Napoleon Hill says, when you only do that for which you are paid, there is nothing out of the ordinary to attract a favorable comment about the transaction. But when you're willing to do more, your action attracts the favorable attention of all who are affected by the transaction and goes another step toward, listen, establishing a reputation that will eventually set the law of increasing returns to work on your behalf. And in here it tells another story of a gentleman that was an employee. And he noticed that the head guy, let's say the CEO of the company, he would stay late after everybody else stayed. Well, this guy stayed also. His name was Carol. He stayed also. And he said, I want to be there in case Mr. Durant needs me. And so it got to the point that Mr. Durant would come out to get something done, and he said, well, what can I help you with? And it got to the point where his service became indispensable. He always found me there ready to serve him. And he said he got in the habit of calling on me. And what happened? He started getting promotions. He was paid by the opportunity it offered him to bring himself to the attention of the man who had it within his power to promote him. And he did. And he continued to give exceptional service. He became a person that Mr. Durant depended on. So, what is this going to be for you? Well, Mr. Hill asked in his paperwork to do an experiment, and I'm going to ask you to do the experiment also. And the experiment is, you might begin this appropriation process now by trying an experiment, which may easily open your eyes and place back of your efforts powers that you did not know. Now, he goes on to tell the story about the scripture that says if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you'll be able to tell the mountain to move, and it will. Now, many of us go, yeah. But you have to think about the idea that if you had that faith and the energy and knowing the powers of the universe, that mountain would move. So he tells the story of a woman who read that scripture, and she lived near a mountain, and she could see it from her front door. So before she retired one night, she commanded the mountain to remove itself to some other place. The next morning, guess what? She jumped out of the bed, she looked out the door, and she said, I knew it wouldn't move. I knew you wouldn't move, just as I expected. Well, just as she expected was the level of her faith. So he says, I'm going to ask you to approach this with full faith that will mark one of the most important turning points in your entire life. So I'm going to read the experiment to you. I'm going to ask you to make the object of this experiment the removal of a mountain that is standing where your temple of success should stand. but where it never can stand until you remove that mountain. And I've talked about this mountain, but I didn't call it a mountain. I call it your limiting beliefs. And many of us have no clue what our limiting belief is. We may talk about it all the time, we may do it, but we don't really know what that limiting belief is. But somebody who hears you speak, somebody who listens to you, they kind of know what your limiting belief is because, honey, it comes right out of your mouth. Right out of your mouth. I knew I couldn't do that. Oh, he'll never do that. I can't. It doesn't seem. It's not logical. I don't care what the wording is, but that's standing in your face. And here's the one that he talks about. It is the feeling that you've been cheated unless you receive material pay for all the service you render. I'll say it another way. I need to get paid for what I do. I need to get paid for doing these videos. I need to do this. I don't know if I should do this or not. I'm being cheated because I'm spending my time creating these videos when I could be, well, it's cold outside right now, but I could be going out and looking and sightseeing and going to the winery, which I plan to do anyway. Okay? But that's what he said. That feeling may be unconsciously expressing itself and destroying the very foundation of your temple of success in scores of ways that you have not observed. And I've heard people, I'm not doing that. Why should I do that? I'm not getting paid enough to do that. He says it in a different way, but you've said it all the time. Why should I do that? That's so-and-so's job. That's not my job. So therefore, you're pushing away success by not just stepping in and doing things. So here's what he's going to ask you to do. I've already started it, and it makes a major difference in your life. The experiment. This experiment is 6 months long. 6 months. During the next 6 months, make it your business to render useful service to at least one person every day for which you neither expect nor accept monetary pay. Let me say that again. Do it for free, whatever it is. And over time, you won't be disappointed. Let me give you an example. I walked in Walmart. They had a Christmas tree hanging up there. And I looked down on the floor, and one of the ornaments was on the floor. Thankfully, it wasn't broken. I watched a number of people look down, see it, and walk by. I went over, I picked it up. What happened was the little hook on it had broken off. I didn't look for the tree. I just picked it up off the floor and set it next on the counter next to the tree. I was on a mission, but I got it up off the floor because some kid would come along and start kicking it. You know that. But I took out a possible hazard out of the way. Another day, I smiled at someone and just told them how beautiful they looked, the outfit they had on. Didn't take any effort on my part. So just do something. You see trash on the ground, pick it up, throw it in its right receptacle. Take on a job that you wouldn't normally do. You see a coworker who is heads down because they got to get a report done. Help them. What can I do to make it easier for you? So you can get out of here on time too. Think about the things that you can do. Now he says, it may be rendered personally to one or more specific persons, or it may be rendered to your employer in the nature of work that you perform after hours. Yes, after hours, not while you're being paid. Remember, you're not getting paid to do this. Again, it may be rendered to entire strangers. It matters not to whom you render this service, so long as you, and here's the key, render it with willingness and solely for the purpose of benefiting others. If you carry out this experiment in the proper attitude of mind, yes. You can't do this because, oh, I'm going to get something for it. I'm going to try this increasing returns thing. I'm giving so I can get. You know, it's like listening to some people on TV that talk about sowing the seed. You got to send in the money to sow the seed. No, because you're expecting something in return. I want you to do this out of the kindness of your heart. If you want to go volunteer, not just on Christmas Day, everybody kind of does that. They're overwhelmed with people. But go volunteer at another time. Just be sure that it's because you willingly do this. The universe sees your heart, sees your attitude. And I say do it with love and kindness in your heart. He says, if you carry out this experiment in the proper attitude of mind, you will discover that which all others who have become familiar with the law upon which it is based have discovered. Namely, that you can no more render service without receiving compensation than you can withhold the rendering of it without suffering the loss of reward. Cause and effect, means and end, seed and fruit cannot be severed, says Emerson. For the effect already blooms in the cause, and the end pre-exists in the means, the fruit of the seed. The law of increasing returns. Do more than what you are being paid. Do it with willingness, kindness, thoughtfulness, and not with the idea that you're getting a reward. Because you get a reward simply by doing the act. Thank you for being with me. If this gave you some good information, don't forget to put down your information below. Make a comment. Tell me what you want to do. Is there something you're already doing in order to put this law of increasing returns in place? If so, comment below. Give me the thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. So as you have believed, let it be done to you, and it is so. See you in the next video.